Good day, everybody. Welcome to the Business Central Overview. I'm going to be your presenter today. My name is Rob Jolliffe. I'm president of Sabre Limited, and I'm very happy to bring to you this overview of Microsoft Dynamics Business Central. Our agenda for today, we're going to do a quick introduction, talk a little bit about who Sabre is and what Business Central is. I'm going to talk about modern cloud ERP. I think it's very important to understand what defines a modern cloud ERP. We're going to talk about what Business Central is. We're going to discuss some of the features of the product. We're going to talk about Microsoft's investment into Business Central. And then I'm going to present an overview of the product, jumping into it and sort of showing you around and highlighting some of the most important areas of it. Okay, so let's jump into an introduction. So Sabre Limited is a Microsoft Dynamics Business Central implementation partner. Most companies can't implement Business Central on their own, and we are manufacturing experts. So I'm going to tend to discuss manufacturing elements while I'm doing this overview, but a lot of what I'm showing you is generic, and it doesn't really matter what type of industry you come from. So if you are in supply chain, distribution, warehousing, if you're in professional services, this presentation should be valuable to you and still show you a lot of information about Business Central. The other thing I want to talk about just before I jump into here is the Dynamics 365 and Business Central and sort of distinguish between the two of them, because some people use those two terms synonymously. But Dynamics 365 is a division of Microsoft, like Cadillac is a division of General Motors. And within the Dynamics 365 division of Microsoft, there are actually a bunch of products that they sell. And Business Central is just one of those products. Now, I would argue that it's one of the larger products in the portfolio. Some of these are actually very small, very niche products that Microsoft has created. Some of them are very large products. And probably the biggest in this category are the sales product at the very top, the finance product, which is just above Business Central, and Business Central itself. There are a couple of others in here that are fairly large. Field service is a fairly important product, but by and large, Business Central is one of the largest products within this portfolio, and it's certainly one of the highest, fastest growing products within the portfolio. So think of Dynamics 365 as the division of Microsoft, and Business Central as one of the products in Dynamics 365. Now, I want to talk about modern cloud ERP. There are actually two ERP systems in the Dynamics 365 space. Business Central and then the finance and the supply chain modules are also part of an ERP system, which is a separate ERP. But cloud ERP is distinct from ERP. And ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning, is a product that, if you're watching this video, you probably know what it is, but it's basically a product that encompasses many different business units within your business for purposes of data collection and applications that the enterprise or the business needs in order to run. So finance, supply chain, purchasing, inventory management, all of those types of activities that are done within your business that need to be tracked in a software package. Cloud ERP is distinct from ERP in that it adds extra features. I believe my definition of cloud ERP is that they must implement, in addition to normal ERP functionality, these 5 bullets. So they have to be hosted by the vendor and serverless. There's no server that you log into. You are probably just going to a web address, putting in a username and password, and you're in the software. It's most likely run in a browser. Doesn't have to be, but most likely. It's upgraded and patched automatically by the vendor. You do not have to initiate, plan, pay for an upgrade and patching to be done to your ERP system. This is a little bit important. I'm going to talk about this with another product that's in the list that I'll show you some examples, and how in some cases that might not be true, in which case I think it violates this definition of cloud ERP. It's device agnostic. It doesn't matter if it's running on a PC laptop, Windows laptop, a Chromebook, an Apple Macintosh. It doesn't matter what it's running on, an iMac. It's device agnostic. It's mobile enabled. So the ERP system can run on your phone. It can run on your tablet. It can run on your iPad. It can run on your Samsung Galaxy. It's able to be running on those mobile devices. It's intended to be running on those mobile devices. And then the last is it's App Store driven, meaning that there's some kind of add-on app store that you can go to, and you have a collection of apps that you could choose from and you can add. And there's one product on my list that I'm going to show you that I'm uncertain about. So I have some examples of what I think constitute Cloud ERP according to this definition. And you can see Dynamics 365, NetSuite, Odoo, which has an asterisk, Acumatica, Infor Cloud XI that kind of deserves an asterisk, and Sage Intacct. The asterisk for Odoo is because this is a very good ERP product, small business ERP product. It's certainly, as I get into tiers, it's certainly a tier 4 ERP that is getting a lot of traction. It's quite good. The problem with Odoo, as I understand it, in having had some discussions, is that if you were to customize it past a certain point, you would have to move it out of their cloud hosting and into an environment where you are responsible for the upgrades. And as soon as that happens, I believe that violates my definition of Cloud ERP. Now, the reason I mentioned Infor Cloud XI and maybe not is because I'm unsure what kind of app store Infor has for their cloud solution. And this Infor Cloud XI is also called Infor Sightline. So if anybody wants to comment in the video below, does Infor have a fully robust, kind of open app store where vendors can add apps for cloud, for their cloud solution? I'd be very interested in that. I'm unsure, but I do know the others do, and they satisfy all the rest of the requirements. In the not a Cloud ERP, and by the way, that is not the entire list. I believe SAP Business One should be in the Cloud ERP list as well, but I just ran out of room. In the not a Cloud ERP, I'll give a couple of examples. And these are hosted in the cloud by the vendor in many cases, but Epicor, Sage X3, Syspro, IFS, Infor Visual. And the reason that they're not Cloud ERPs is because they're not auto-upgraded by the ERP vendor. They don't have app stores available that you can just sort of click an app and install it automatically like you would on your phone. They are not serverless. They are server apps that require server. Now that server could be hosted by the vendor and kind of hidden from you, so you don't usually need to log into it. But in general, they because of that, they violate it. Now, I do believe some of them are working on cloud solutions that are incomplete. They don't have every feature in their core ERP systems. If anybody knows, makes any comments below, because the whole market is moving towards Cloud ERP. So based on what I just showed you, there's a fairly small number of true Cloud ERP systems. There are a couple really big ones that I'm not showing because they don't fit the market that we're talking about today. And this gets into what are called ERP market tiers. There are, some people define 3, I'm going to define 5 in this example. Tier 1 is enterprise ERP systems. It's 500 million. You could almost say that 500 million in revenue from the businesses that are looking for ERP systems are definitely in that enterprise space. You can almost say that there's another tier 0 that's above that, which would be maybe 5 billion in revenue. And that is occupied almost exclusively by SAP and Oracle. Those are the only 2 products that are in the tier 0. They are Fortune 100 companies or Fortune 500 companies. Virtually the entire market is between those 2 businesses. But tier 1 should be under 5 billion, but over 500 million. That market is occupied by many products, including some on the list, particularly Dynamics 365, finance and supply chain. Business Central's big brother is playing in that tier 1 space, as is NetSuite, perhaps. Tier 2, Tier 3, and Tier 4 are all elements of mid-market. And mid-market is where virtually all ERP sales are made by volume, by number of ERP sales. And then the small office, Tier 5, is really not at the point where they are using an ERP yet. They are typically using accounting software packages. So these are small office accounting, small office business packages. Business Central sits in the Tier 2, Tier 3, and Tier 4 range, and it's completely covering Tier 3 and probably half of Tier 4 and maybe half of Tier 2. So I define Business Central as being suited to businesses in the $5 million to $250 million revenue range. And that overlaps with Acumatica, NetSuite, Sage Intacct, and SAP Business One. Now, I would say SAP Business One and Acumatica are probably almost exactly a Venn diagram overlapping Business Central. Sage Intacct is probably a bit on the smaller side. It's pushing down into the tier 4 more than it's pushing up into the tier 2. And NetSuite is the reverse. It's probably pushing past tier 2 into tier 1 a little bit, and maybe not all the way down to certainly not to the bottom of tier 3. I don't think a $10 or $20 million company should be looking at NetSuite based on what I've heard about it. Current implemented companies per Microsoft for Business Central range from 1 to 2,000 ERP users. Now, there's kind of an important point to make, which is 2,000 ERP users is probably more than a $500 million company. So Business Central is pushing up into that, even into the tier 1. But typically, it's very specialized use cases where there's some sort of capability in Business Central, maybe an add-on vendor has created something that is really, really good for that business. It's very rare to see businesses in that space looking at Business Central as an initial decision to look at the product. Okay, so what is Business Central? It is an ERP system. I've mentioned a few times that it is an ERP system. I gave a rough explanation of ERP earlier, but to put it in more specificity, it's something that connects your sales, your service, your finance, your operation teams, your business basically into one database. And Business Central is that single database that's handling these functions. So your financial management, which is your accounting, your sales management, which is both the actual taking of sales orders from customers, but also in some cases the CRM functionality of managing them, service management in the case where you're providing field services, project management, operations, which would include manufacturing, and then supply chain management, which would include purchasing and warehousing and warehouse management. If we look at Business Central's feature set, this is a good summary of the features that come out of the box with Business Central. And the two in the bottom corner, service management and manufacturing, are available in the premium version of Business Central. All the rest of the boxes are available in the essentials version of Business Central. Now, one note that the manufacturing asterisk, the assembly management is part of supply chain planning. It is not exclusively in the Business Central Premium. This is a typo. So if you are light assembly manufacturer, but you have complex warehouse management and inventory management and supply chain and planning, and you need purchasing and you need everything, and you're like, assembly management is in premium. That is incorrect. Assembly management is in essentials, and you can do a lot of light manufacturing with assembly management. So the finance and accounting in Business Central is really GAAP accounting. It is not the type of Sarbanes-Oxley special accounting requirements that publicly traded companies need to have. Those are in the higher end. That's getting you into that tier 1. That's typically what pushes you into the tier 1. But it's a very strong GAAP accounting solution. It's very good in the sales and marketing, the purchasing payables, the supply chain, the warehouse management, inventory. All of those areas are very, very strong. It's got a really good service management capability for this market. I've worked with a lot of other ERP systems, and its service management is quite robust. It's got a really good manufacturing core within the Business Central system. You can do core manufacturing without a problem in Business Central. It also has a very strong set of add-ons for manufacturing to extend it and really kind of pump it up to the next level and make it equal to all of the rest of the competitors, in my opinion, within the market. And I specialize in manufacturing, and I have all of my clients use Business Central for their manufacturing. The last thing with regards to this is Business Central is part of the rest of Microsoft stack. So Microsoft has a bunch of products and a bunch of different types of areas of business functionality, and Business Central is integrated with all of them. And Microsoft is really making a big effort to try and bring it into their core suite. Last thing I want to talk about before I get into demonstrating the product and kind of going through its features is I want to talk about the investment Microsoft is making in Business Central. So I was introduced to this product about 5 or 6 years ago at a Microsoft conference. We were already selling the Dynamics NAV product, which is its predecessor. And Microsoft announced the new version of Navision or NAV. They said it's going to have a new name. It's going to be cloud-based. It's going to be running in it's serverless. You pay a subscription to run it. We were pretty excited. At the time, they didn't have a name for it. And they described it as they were describing it. I began realizing, they think this is like an upgrade from QuickBooks. Microsoft thinks this is a 2, 3, 4, 5 user play where they're going to go after lots and lots of really, really small businesses that have outgrown QuickBooks. They have been a victim of their own solution. They had no expectation of how successful Business Central was going to be. I mentioned earlier, there are companies that are running Business Central in the cloud with 2,000 concurrent users. This is far beyond their dreams. They had no expectations that it was going to be such a successful product. And that success has meant that Microsoft is investing much more in the product than they did in those early days. The new releases of Business Central occur every 6 months, and Microsoft publishes a web page, which is updated regularly. This was updated approximately 20 days before I recorded this video. It was January 23rd, 2025, in case anybody's wondering. And there are new features being added regularly. So I took a screenshot, I zoomed in, and I grabbed a list of all of the areas where they're upgrading or they're enhancing. So application is the core application of Business Central, including accounting. And Microsoft is regularly adding new features to that, especially Copilot and AI features that are integrating into the accounting and the application in general. Country and regional, Business Central is now capable of running in many, many countries around the world. I don't know exactly how many. I feel like it's at least 100. Development. Microsoft has always been a company that is focused on software developers, and they are integrating a lot of their enhanced software development capabilities into Business Central. I mentioned earlier, Business Central includes the development tools. You do not have to pay extra for them. It is not an extra upgrade. It is basically a commercial open source software application. E-commerce. Microsoft is building integrations with Shopify. That is their e-commerce of preference. But that e-commerce integration is constantly being enhanced and updated. Governance and administration, because Microsoft is finding larger companies are using Business Central, they are embedding more cybersecurity governance and controls and security into the system for administration purposes. Reporting and data analysis, Microsoft's constantly enhancing the integration of Business Central with Power BI and other reporting tools. Supply chain management, these now we're getting into manufacturing, which is close to my heart. Project management, warehousing, purchasing, sales. The supply chain management capabilities of Business Central are pretty extensive already, and Microsoft is making big investments. The 2025 Release 1, which is going to be in about May, and the 2025 Release 2, which is going to be around October, November. Those two versions are going to be enhancing manufacturing quite a bit. There was I was in a manufacturing roundtable. What do we need to add to it to make it more competitive with other products in the market? They really took a lot of that great notes in that session and have gone back to the drawing board to look at what they can do to improve things. Sustainability management. Microsoft is implementing carbon tracking, sustainability tracking into the system. So you can have carbon ledgers in your Business Central solution today. That is something that they put in. It is required in Europe, I believe, or it's coming very soon, depending on the size of the business. It will eventually be everywhere. And then finally, the user experience, the usability of the software, the feel of how it works and how modern it is. That is something Microsoft is regularly working on. And I have seen great advances of this in the last 6 years. So with that introduction out of the way, we're going to get into the product. We're going to take a look at it, and we're going to see how you can use Business Central in your business and what it feels like and what it looks like. We're going to start our exploration of Business Central by looking at user roles, which are also called profiles sometimes. This is Business Central. And when we log into Business Central, we are presented with a landing page, which is called the Role Center. And this landing page or Role Center is designed so that it is a set of KPIs, a set of to-dos, and a menu system that can be used by the user in that particular role. And this is where we get into something called a role-tailored ERP system, where each person, depending on what they do within the organization, has a different role that they are assigned, and that role gives them kind of a starting point with all of the most common features and requirements that they would have within that role. So if we scroll down through this role, which is the business manager role, and this is one of the more powerful roles within the system with the most features in it, you can see that there's first of all, there's a welcome screen. There's a menu at the top of the role center. There are these squares, this turquoise colored squares, which are called queues. We'll get into what those are in a few minutes when we do a little bit more exploring of the user interface. There are graphs and charts. You could see here that there's a place to insert Power BI. Power BI is natively integrated with Business Central. And there's a report inbox so that users can request reports be sent to them every day and run at night and appear in this report inbox. Now, we could also look at a sales order processor role. So I've opened up multiple roles here in different tabs, and I'm going to walk through a few of them and discuss what these roles are. So here I have a role where Molly is logged in, and Molly is now seeing as if she were a sales order entry person, and her job was to enter the orders from customers and be a customer service representative. You can see that her menu is different. If we scroll back to the business manager menu, it's a different menu. I could hide this so that it looks a little bit more alike. She has actions here as a business manager, but when she logs in as the sales order entry person in what is called an order processor, she has different actions. She has a different menu. She has different queues on her screen and different KPIs that are measured and information that's presented. For instance, this My Items section has been added to the role center, which would be the items that Molly would be responsible for. It could be her customer list as well that's added. If I switch to the manufacturing manager, now I see Molly's role center has changed. So the role center is generally assigned to the user. The user can change their role center. They can also customize their role center. And finally, I'll do a purchasing agent role center, which is a much simpler role center. As you can see, there's less to a purchasing agent role center, but the features and functionality here are very much specific to what purchasing agents would need to do within organizations, buyers and purchasing agents. So the idea of the role centers is that Business Central comes with a large number of role centers, which are also called profiles. So if I search profiles and I take a look at them, and you can see that it's profiles bracket roles. There are a lot of profiles available in the system, and they range from everything from the president of the company or small business president to like a shipping manager or a team member, warehouse worker. So these roles are pre-created not as security groups, but as standard templated landing pages that contain all of the information that person needs to do their job, all in one place. Now, next, let's explore the user interface of Business Central a little bit. So if we come back to the business manager's role center, let's take a look through the user interface and see what's here. So as you can see, I have a menu that I can drop down. I can see different choices in the finance menu, the cash management, sales, etc. And these menu choices have been selected by Microsoft because from their point of view, these are the most common menu items used by a business manager. You will find that with each release, Microsoft might change the menus a little bit, but you could customize the menu. You can add your own elements to it. Here I have pinned underneath the menu, I have customers, vendors, items, bank accounts, and chart of accounts, which would be presumably the most common things that the user might want to see. Let's say I also want to see something like resources here. Resources are people who work for me or pieces of equipment that I might sell or schedule. So if I just start typing resources in the search, I will find from all the menus within the system, I will find the places where resources are. And here I found the resource list. If I click this bookmark icon, and I leave, what we'll find when I close this is that resources is now being added here. So it wasn't there before, but I've added resources. If I click on resources, I'll bring up the resources list and the little bookmark will be bookmarked here. If I unclick that and I go back to my role center, resources is being removed from the list. So it's very easy to customize, very easy to add things to this homepage that you use regularly. You can also put it into a personalization mode, which we'll get into later, and you can do even more. I have actions. These are to create things. So if I want to create a sales quote, I click the plus sales quote action, and that opens up a blank sales quote for me. I won't complete it. I'll just go back. But you can see that I could do sales quotes and sales orders and purchase quotes and purchase orders, and I can do quite a bit from this role. This is one of the reasons I like to use it in my demos. There's a show demo tours. There are some KPIs here under the activities. I can see the monthly sales, overdue sales invoices. I'm in a sample database, and for this current real month in the real world, there are no sales. I do have some sales quotes and sales orders. You can see them down here that there's a quantity of them, and there's these boxes which are called queues. If I click on the queue, if I highlight it, it'll tell me in a pop-up text what that queue is for. But when I click on it, I will actually drill into the 3 sales quotes that are listed. And if I highlight any one of them, you'll see down on the right here, this details section contains what's called a fact box. And you'll see these in the system. There are actually 2 fact boxes. There's a customer details fact box and a customer statistics fact box. And by clicking on it, I'm bringing up information, in this case, about Alpine Ski House. If I click on this A-Datum Corporation sales order, I'm bringing up information about A-Datum. I can drill down into the actual sales quotes and see the detail about the sales quote. And here I see more information about, in this case, A-Datum Corporation. There's also the sales line details. When I click on the line of the sales order, if there were multiple lines, I would see the item and its current, the required quantity. I can see the current inventory on hand and different information, depending on the fact box I'm on. So right now I have 3 items available. That is not necessarily how many I have in inventory. That's just how many are currently available to me. If I scroll down further, we have more queues, and you'll notice that some of these queues are just plain, and some of them have bars on them, little green, red, yellow bars. Those are actually KPI data, and they will turn different colors. In my case, they're all green, but depending on, as we go through this, as we see some more examples, we'll see some where the KPIs are not all green, and you get different colored KPI bars based on statistics and information and KPIs that have been set up in the system. If I continue to scroll down, I'm going to get into these reports, including Power BI reports. And later we'll do a quick little how to set up a Power BI report in Business Central. It's really easy. And there are a lot of Power BI reports now that are delivered with Business Central. Microsoft gives a whole starter kit of, I believe, about 16 of them that are now available. I also have these different graphs and charts that are already in the system. These are not Power BI, but they're just standard charts and graphs that are part of Business Central. So these can be embedded into the Role Center as well. And finally, I have my report inbox in this example. Before I move on from the user interface, I'm going to talk about the 3 main types of pages you're going to find in Business Central. We're going to use the item and the sales quotes as different places we can see those. So if I go into the sales quotes, I'm going to bring up what's called a list page. And in my case, we already looked at this, but it's a list of the 3 sales quotes. If I bring up the items, I'm also going to see a list page, but in this case, it's a list page of items. I can turn the information on and see detailed information about the item. And as you can see, I can even embed a Power BI. So if I wanted to embed a Power BI that showed the Athens desk sale by month as a chart, I can embed that Power BI. There's details about the item that show up in the fact boxes on the right. So fact boxes are very user-friendly. They can have all kinds of data in them, and they can be modified either by developers, or you can personalize them in some cases and add and remove details. The list page shows me a list of all of the entries that relate to whatever the list is. So in this case, it's a list of items. If I were to choose customers, it would be a list of customers. If I choose sales quotes, it's a list of sales quotes. As you can see, the list page has different views. In this case, I'm seeing a tile view, but I can change the tile view to a list view, so it's similar to the items list view. And then there's an intermediate view, which is a tall tile view, which gives me these icon style tiles. I'm going to stick to the list view. I think that's the most common way of viewing it. Within any of these lists, there's a really powerful search capability. So if I'm looking for something like a Tokyo chair, I can start typing it, as long as I spell it right. And it'll filter down to that. I can also type the 1900, for instance, which will bring me up a particular item that has 1900 in its item number. So it'll search through all the fields, not necessarily every single one of them, but most of the fields on the page are searchable from this search screen. There's also a filter capability. And when I do filters, I can now filter on specific things. So I can say, I want to filter on the item number. And I want all the item numbers that start with 1900 and go to at least 1940. And by putting the double dot in, I'm going to get a list of all of the item numbers between 1900 and 1940. I can add another filter to that, and I can say, I want the description to also contain chair. I put an asterisk in front and behind the chair to indicate that chair anywhere in the description. So what I've got is I've got this ability to do filters, combination filters. I can add the filters, and then I can save this. And I can call this chairs less than 1940. And now I have an all view with everything and a chairs below 1940 view, which shows me just those chairs that are between 1900 and 1940 in this list. If I want to change that, and you can notice that there's a whole bunch of pre-configured lists, I can go up here and I can drop down and change back and forth between those views that I've created and views that are created by Microsoft that are pre-existing views. And some of those views are analysis views. Analysis views are a little bit like a pivot table. They let me take a view, change it into a report format, and have information on the screen in a simplified way. So I don't have to dump to Excel to do pivot table and pivot analysis. I can just do it right within Business Central. I can create a custom one by clicking on the icon and then just building out what I want the fields to be and moving them around here. I'm going to close that and go out of the analysis view and back to the regular view. That's the first type of page, the list page. Very powerful page in Business Central. Allows me to manipulate, search, sort. If I open up an individual item, I'm now going to be visiting a new type of page called a card page. So we just spent time on the list page. This is a card page. And a card page is broken into sections. And a card generally refers to one and only one thing. So in this case, it's the Athens desk, and it's all of the information about an Athens desk. It includes a picture of it. It includes information about inventory, if it's kept on a specific shelf in the facility. If there's one place where it's always put, you can put that shelf location here. If you move it around, you can also create bins and put them in different bin locations. That's separate. It gives me some of the statistical information here, which is actually looked up from other pages. So quantity on purchase order shows that I have 7 of them currently on a purchase order coming in. And if I click on that, it drills down, shows me the purchase order. And then I can click on the purchase order itself and it'll open up the purchase order for me. And I can open the full list. I can do that. I can show document and see that purchase order. We'll talk about how the difference between the page the purchase order shows and this card page in a minute. You'll notice that the card page is made of groups of information with titles on them like this. These are called fast tabs. So I can expand the item fast tab and see the 7 fields that are by default listed, or I can show more and I can see the extra fields that are not by default listed. I can personalize this to choose which ones are shown when I have it collapsed like this and which ones are not. You'll also notice when I completely collapse it, in some cases, there's more information. Up here in the cost and posting, there's these 4 pieces of information. When I click to expand it, they disappear, but you'll notice that the costing method and the standard cost, unit cost, retail, furniture, resale, here are different fields. And when I collapse it, I'm seeing the standard cost and the retail, furniture, and resale fields that have been populated within the system, which are called posting groups, and the tax group code. So I can elevate certain things that I want to see even when the section is collapsed, and I can open and close these sections, and they contain a lot of information. You can see that there's a lot of details and data kept about the item card. Things like customers and vendors also have cards. Something like a sales quote, though, which is similar to the purchase order we looked at before, is the third type of page. This is the transaction page. And in a transaction page, and I'll collapse this information section on the right so we could see it a little bit more, it is also made up of fast tabs. And I can collapse the fast tabs, but one of the fast tabs on transactions is usually a lines fast tab. And within the lines, I'm able to add lines to, in this case, my sales quote. So another customer contacts me. They want to buy a different item. They want to buy the Athens desk that we looked at before. It's going to prompt me because I have a shipment date on the order, but the working date that's set up in the system is actually in the future. You can set a working date. This is the date by default you want to use. I could say, we're going to buy 10 chairs. We need 10 desks to go with those 10 chairs. It's automatically going to look up the price of the desk from a pricing lookup that was defined on the item card. It's going to fill in, and you're going to see also that it's calculated a subtotal, taxes. Otherwise, the page works very similarly to the card page. The big difference with it is there can be many sales quotes. So rather than just have one sales quote master record like you do for items, you're going to have many sales quotes, and they're many for tray research, and they refer to items. So the cards are used to define the sort of static information that is generally the same over and over again. And then the documents are used to define these documents that you're transacting. Most of the work is done on these pages, and most of the setup is done on the card pages. There's one other kind of card page, which is a setup card page. Setup card pages, they look like the standard card page, but there's only one of that setup. So there's only one sales and receivable setup, etc. I want to talk about the manufacturing and supply chain features quickly, because I'm in the supply chain and manufacturing space, and that's what my customers usually want to know about. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drill into the menu. So this is the menu of that role center we were just looking at, but kind of expanded out so that we could see it all at once. So everything that we could see on our homepage is all shown here. When I go into the explore more roles, I'm actually now going to see all of the menus of all of the role centers that are available to this user, that are being activated within the system. And today I want to talk about the manufacturing one. I also want to talk about the purchasing and the sales. So we're going to go into the order processing part of the sales to talk about that, because manufacturers process orders and ship them to customers. And so we're going to take a quick look at this. We have customers and contacts, sales quotes and sales orders, blanket sales orders, sales return orders. People often ask me, how do you do an RMA in the system? This is how you would do an RMA. You would do a sales return order. Sales invoices, to invoice your customer, credit memos to give credits, certificates of supply, order planning, which is the capability of looking at your orders that are in place and then determining what materials you need to purchase, etc. It does have limited marketing capabilities within the system. That is not really necessarily manufacturing specific. And to be honest, there are add-ons from Microsoft, or rather sister products from the Dynamics 365 community, much better at marketing than what comes out of Business Central. Some clients are looking for that really advanced CRM and marketing capabilities, and Microsoft offers those in the Dynamics 365 sales and Dynamics 365 marketing products. You have, as you can see, there's a lot of information here. These are those Power BI reports I was mentioning, that there's a whole bunch of them now that have been created. And inventory and pricing is also part of the system. So I could create my items. I can define their sales prices by customer buying group, etc. Purchasing, basically a mirror image. Within purchasing, I have the reverse capabilities. In sales, I have customers and contacts and sales quotes and sales orders and blankets. In purchasing, I have vendors and contacts and purchase quotes and purchase orders and blankets. I have purchase return orders. I've received something from a vendor. It's defective. I have to return it to the vendor. I can do that through purchase return orders. Transfer orders are a feature of Business Central. The way I like to describe them to some customers is think of them as an internal buy sell. But if I have a factory located in China, and that factory makes parts that then ships to my factory located in San Francisco, or my warehouse in San Francisco, and it's all my inventory, I put it through a transfer order, and the transfer order keeps track of the selling part where the factory in China has shipped it, and the receiving part where the factory in San Francisco is receiving it. Now, typically what's really happening is my sale occurs FOB Singapore, and when that item is placed on the boat, it belongs to the San Francisco location, and it's being sold to them by the Singapore or the Chinese location, and it goes on the boat, and the transfer order is for that product that's on the boat. Could be coming from Mexico, could be coming from Egypt, could be coming from Asia, India. It doesn't really matter. It's just it's my product when it goes on the boat, because I bought it by then, and I need to keep track of where it is and when it's going to arrive, but I can't use it. So this nets it out of available, but it puts it in as a pending arrival. Finally, we'll go into manufacturing. So manufacturing modules within Business Central offer a lot of features. So there's a lot of Power BI reports, also workload capacity reports, allocated hours, expected capacity need. So give you sort of a high level view of how you're loading your shop. You have product design, which allows you, again, items are repeated. You'll notice items are also under the sales side, or the purchasing side. You'll see items and probably in the sales side as well. Yeah, here's items under items and inventory and pricing. So it's the same items. It's not a different set of items. It's just they're repeating it in the menu. Production BOM, which is a bill of materials for manufacturing an item. And you can have more than one production BOM for an item. And you can have obsoleted, unavailable versions and available versions. Sometimes you have a different BOM if you make the item in one location than if you make it in another. So in some cases, in location A, you may buy a part, and in location B, you can make it yourself. So you'd have making the same item in both locations, but in one, you're using the bought part, and the other one, you're using the fabricated part, and that changes the BOM. So you can have as many production BOMs as you want. It's often used within product configurators to use multiple production BOMs. You can have multiple production routings. Routings are the sequence of steps, machine centers and work centers that the product has to go through, how long it spends in each machine center and work center. You can see in the capacities that you could create machine centers and work centers. You can have a work center which contains machine centers. Some customers use work centers without specifying the details of the machine centers that are in them. They just say, I have a work center for CNC lathe, and I have 4 CNC lathes. Which of those 4 is used doesn't matter to the customer. In that case, I can just use work centers. This is probably the most common way of setting up manufacturing that we see. Other times we see customers who want machine centers. They want to know CNC 1, 2, 3, 4. They all have slightly different capabilities, and so they want to keep track. There's something called a family. In a family, classic use of a family would be I do nesting, and I'm going to take a sheet, and I'm going to cut a bunch of different parts out of that one sheet. I could create a family that indicates I just have one piece of raw material. I have one routing, which is using a plasma cutter, but I get 12 different finished parts off of it. So that would be a family. And let's see if there's anything else in here that I would recommend discussing. Nothing really. Under planning, though, I have production orders. So I can have simulated production orders. And under operations, I can have planned, firm planned, released, and finished production orders. Simulated production orders are usually used to calculate estimated costs So I can use those as in an estimating function, create a simulated production order, put my bill of materials into it, put my routing into it, like basically hand enter it, and then look at the statistics of that, and it'll roll up what the cost of that simulated production order would be for me to make that item. There are some other uses for it, but that's the classic use that we see. There's also the ability to create production forecasts. What do I need to make? What am I trying to make for inventory? I can also do sales forecasts, which are similar. Production forecasts might be for making subcomponents. Sales forecasts would be for making finished goods typically. The planned production orders, firm plan, released, and finished. The first three are used in day-to-day manufacturing. The planned are placeholders. The firm planned are placeholders that have been firmed, like we're going to make this for sure. And then the released is I am now sending it to the shop floor to be made. The finished production order represents a production order that's had all of the work done on it for purposes of tracking, of rolling the costs into inventory correctly and kind of finishing that off. Nobody can put any more time or costs to this. You also have the ability to do consumption of materials against production orders and reporting of capacity time spent on the production order, which will roll up costs and put it into inventory. So you also have the ability to do costing, which includes things like revaluations, standard cost worksheets, updating the unit costs of items, and tracking something called stock keeping units, which is how you track the cost depending on specific characteristics of the item you're making, like where I'm making it or where I'm shipping it from, or what color it is. I could create different stock keeping units for those different variations and combinations. So the manufacturing modules, I haven't gone into the individual screens and showed them to you. I've just spent the time here on the menu. We'll do a deeper dive into the manufacturing modules in a separate video. Okay, let's talk about the integrations that are available out of the box with Business Central. So we're just going to jump into Business Central now. And if we start on the home page, I'm not going to try and set these up or complete their configuration. They're usually just driven by a wizard. I can kind of show that with this Get Started with Power BI. So here's an integration to Power BI that's native and out of the box. And I can do this on the home page, and I can also do this on the individual card pages, like a customer card, a vendor card. So if I get started with Power BI, it's going to walk me through a wizard. I do need a Power BI license to do this, which I don't have currently configured. But once you have that Power BI license, it's as simple as walking through the wizard. Second integration I'm going to show you is with Microsoft Excel. I think I've talked about this in previous videos, but all I really need to do is open an Excel, edit in Excel, share to Teams. These three integrations are inherently built into the system. Now, one thing to note, this works very easily in the cloud environment when you're logged into your Office 365 account to log into your Business Central. And in those cases, these work really well. I'm actually logged into a different Business Central account than my Office 365 account, so it'll cause some issues. It also similarly causes issues when you're on-prem, because when you're on-prem, you're not really logged into Office 365. You're logged into a local copy of Business Central. This doesn't work as well. There's lots of things that you have to do to make it function, and it doesn't function with everything. If I go into here, I can see the integration that Business Central is actually part of Microsoft Power Platform. It's part of Microsoft Office 365 platform. And I have Outlook, for instance, here. So what I should be able to do is I should be able to run one of the assisted setup wizards. So there are a bunch of assisted setups within standard Business Central, and one of them is the setting up of outgoing email. So I can set the system up so it'll send my emails automatically through my Office 365 account. It's connected to your Microsoft 365 Entra accounts, which are the user logins for Microsoft 365. You can fetch the users from there. That's how you bring your users into Business Central. You can set up Copilot and AI capabilities within it, which we'll talk about in the next section. You have the ability to do integrations with banking. So there's a bunch of banking integrations that are out of the box with the system. You can do your Outlook add-in, decentralized deployment, and Excel add-in. So both Microsoft Outlook and Microsoft Excel have add-ins that are specifically designed to work with Business Central. You can use Power Automate within the environment. Let's look at Power Automate very quickly. So these are all integrations with Microsoft technologies they're out of the box that you could just start using. You just have to run the wizard to set them up and you begin using them. Very, very easy. One of the areas they have is under automation. You have the ability to create Power Automates and create different flows. And you can do this for many of the screens in the system. In this case, I'm logged into a sales order. And I can create approval flows, automated flows, and other types of flows, which is the Power Automate term for basically a macro, is the best way to think of it, right from the sales order. So if I wanted to have a flow that automatically ran, so an action-based on a flow or an automated flow, I wanted to have a action or an automation that when I took an order and it exceeded a certain dollar value, let's say the boss always wants to be emailed whenever an order of over $100,000 value comes in. Very, very easy to do with Power Automate. That's basically what this is meant for. And Power Automate is a Microsoft tool. There's another Microsoft solution that Business Central natively integrates with. You don't get at it from within Business Central. You more access it remotely, but it's called Power Apps. But Power Apps are built to build apps that are mostly designed for mobile use, sometimes for tablet or desktop use. But you can basically create new apps. Those apps can connect to your Business Central database, and you can create like utilities that you run on mobile devices that you give to your staff and allows them to interact with Business Central without having to have a full license of Power Apps. Actually, Microsoft Dynamics team member, Business Central team member is actually able to run those Power Apps that are connected to Business Central. So you could create a Power App with some custom information you want to collect from the field, and you want that to be pushed into Business Central automatically. For other integrations, we talked about Power BI, we've talked about Power Apps, we've talked about Power Automate, we've talked about Excel, Outlook briefly. The Outlook integration is really very nice, and we have some videos, YouTube videos about the Outlook integration to Business Central that you could watch if you're interested in seeing how those work. There are also, within Business Central, there's something called the Marketplace. And also called Microsoft AppSource apps. So as I started typing Marketplace, it brings up now Microsoft AppSource apps. If you saw older versions of Business Central, it was usually called the App Marketplace. Today they call it the AppSource apps. When I go into that, what I'm going to see is I'm going to see a list of all of the solutions that have been created and published by partners that are available. If we want to look for something like ADP, really popular payroll package, just type ADP. Now we have ADP Workforce Now outbound integration. So this is an integration that's actually published by ADP themselves to integrate their system. Let's take something like Jira, which is a very popular product in the market. There's a few Jira connectors here. These are from third parties. So sometimes these are built by Microsoft. Sometimes they're built by third parties. If we go in here, I can, because this is basically a standard Business Central search field, I can go in here and say, I want to search by the publisher name Microsoft and just see what Microsoft is publishing. So Microsoft's publishing Ceridian Payroll, very popular payroll product. They have a bunch of sample company data that they publish as well, but Ceridian Payroll integration out of the box. They have, let's see what else they have here that might be of interest to us. There should be a Microsoft QuickBooks integration. Yep. QuickBooks payroll data integrations. They have PayPal integration. And one of the most important things I think right now that Microsoft has added is Shopify integration. So Shopify is very popular web store e-commerce site. It's probably one of the most popular ones in the market. It's not necessarily the best one in the market, but it's definitely very popular. Microsoft has built in complete and total integration with Shopify out of the box with Business Central. We've saved the best for last. Let's jump into Copilot for a couple minutes and take a look at some capabilities of Copilot in Business Central. Okay. Going to get back into our role center for the business manager. I'll close the Get Started guide, and we're going to go through a little bit of Copilot in Business Central. We'll start with items. So we're in the item card or the item list, and what we want to do is we're going to use a Copilot to analyze the list. So this is a Copilot. It's going to prompt us and say, hey, what do you want to do? I'm going to say, let's sort and filter this list on quantity, smallest to largest. So that was the prompt it suggested when I dropped down. It says sort on quantity. Let's do large or most to least. And then let it generate. And what it'll do is it's going to generate an analysis view of the item list for us, sorted by the description, what type it is, and then give us the quantity from in this case the largest quantity that we have on hand, which is for this this hex head screw, all the way down to the least quantity we have on hand, which if we scroll down we'll see that there's some actually with negative quantity on hand, which happens sometimes in an ERP. So I'll just discard that, and we'll move on to the next. So that's a Copilot that helps you create views and do analysis of information within the system. There is also a Copilot in the financial reporting category. So you could use Copilot now within your financial report. So if you want to create an income statement, you want to have Copilot help you suggest what the columns and the structure of your financial statement should be. That is part of Copilot now as well. Let's go back to the main homepage. There's also Copilot now that I can use in my bank reconciliation module. So you can see that there's a Copilot here to do reconciliation. Now I'd have to import a bank statement and then have Copilot do its reconciliation. But Copilot has demonstrated it has a much higher rate of successful matching than the old system did, and it's really doing about half the matching for you. Or half again as much matching for you as the old system did. So it's almost twice as good as what the original system was. Those are three features of Copilot. So we have Copilot for doing analysis, Copilot for doing bank reconciliations, Copilot for assisting you in creating financial reports. If I go into a sales order and I create a new sales order, let's say for the School of Fine Art, and I want to find, like, let's say the last order and copy the lines from the last order into it, there is a Copilot to suggest sales order lines. And I can say, okay, I want to copy line items from the latest, instead of sales invoice, let's just say sales order. And generate that. And what it should do is it should look through, find the latest sales order that was created, and suggest the line. So it was an Antwerp conference table, which was the last time. I can select that line and then insert it. And now what it's doing is it's automatically adding this. This is very handy when I need to look for something. So another example of doing it would be chairs. So I just want to suggest line of chairs. It'll look through all my items and say, here's some example chairs. I'm not exactly sure why I chose this specific chair. I can edit that to be black chairs, for instance, and it'll look through and it'll look for chairs that are black. And in this case, I found the Paris guest chair. Copilot, because it's an AI, it sometimes gives odd responses, and it's not always easy to figure out why. One of the really useful things is this suggests sales lines from a file. So I could get a text file, I could get an Excel sheet, I could get a Word document from a customer, and this is what I want to order from you. I can just load that up and it'll go through and it'll do the parsing of that. And it doesn't have to be pre-formatted in any specific format. If I go into items, I could go to something like my Athens mobile pedestal here. Item, it's got a nice picture of it. I can use Copilot to generate marketing text. So I'll just say, hey, Copilot, do some marketing text for this Athens mobile pedestal. And here it's created this mobile pedestal Copilot text for me generally to send to like an e-commerce site. I could say, hey, let's make that really casual and pretty short and generate that for me. And now it's going to generate a much shorter version. It's going to be a little bit more casual in its tone. So I can use Copilot. I could keep that, and now that becomes my marketing text for this item card. And with Copilot, I can also translate into different languages. So I can have multilingual marketing text in different languages for the same item. Another feature, it's not Copilot necessarily, but it's AI, is AI generated forecast suggestions. I have to have enough sales history or consumption history for it to generate these forecasts, which in the sample database, there isn't really enough to do that. But that's another feature that has been in the system actually even before Copilot was released as a product. So those are a few examples of Copilot. This is not exhaustive. Microsoft releases new features in Business Central approximately every April, and again, approximately every September. So if you go online and you look at YouTube videos, you'll tend to find new YouTube videos being introduced at approximately those dates. So there was a YouTube video exploring Dynamics 365 Copilot in September of 2024. I'll link that below in the description. So that concludes our review of Microsoft Dynamics Business Central. If you guys are have enjoyed this video and are, if you've stayed this long, I hope you have enjoyed it. Please do not hesitate to like the video, to subscribe to Sabre Limited's YouTube channel, which I hope is where you found the video. If you are interested in talking to me personally about Business Central, understanding it a little better, I gave a good surface level overview of the product. There's a lot more to learn about it, but I think I tried to do it justice. If you want to talk to me about anything in more detail, we're going to put my book a meeting link into the description of the video, so you can book a meeting with me. You'll also have a link to Sabre Limited's website, so that if you'd like to go look at our website, check us out, please don't hesitate. And hopefully everybody enjoyed this. It was a positive experience for you. I'd love to hear your feedback. So if anybody has any comments to make, please leave them on the video. Thanks very much and have a great day.